All right, everybody, welcome back to SLS Network, Success on the Spectrum podcast. It is the Chey and Lyndsay show today. We have started a new format, so these episodes are a little bit shorter. We're going to be going over hot take, ADHD hack, and just our content for the day. So Shay's actually going to kick us off with a hot take.
Yes. Hello, everybody. So my ADHD hot take is that it isn't a time management problem. It is a time perception problem. So everyone thinks that people with ADHD just need like a planner or a better routine. And it's like, have you tried time blocking? And we're like, ma'am, I don't even know what day it is. And I have to set reminders to shower. So that's not really going to work. And anytime that I've tried to stick to a planner or whatever, it really just falls to the wayside. And so ADHD is not about being lazy or bad at managing time. It's that our brains literally don't feel time the same way that neurotypicals do. And so neurotypicals live on this like smooth flowing timeline. Meanwhile, we live in two states, now and not now. So, that's it. So everything is either happening right this second or it might happen by 2053.
Or not at all.
Yes, exactly. So, you say, give me 10 minutes. And I hear you have time to start a YouTube channel, reorganize the sock drawer, and have a panic because we don't understand the time. That is why we are perpetually late. And we also way overbook ourselves. And, we're like, oh, we can totally fit all of these things in a day. And then you start doing the things and it starts overlapping. And you're like, oh my God, there's no way. I way overcommitted to myself, overcommitted myself. And so, if you have ADHD and you feel like you're constantly behind or you're rushing, it's not your fault. Your brain just runs on vibes, not clocks. And the real fix is less shame. So, more tools that work with your brain and maybe, gently reminding yourself that, that your brain perceives time differently. And, one of the ways that has, helped me with this is before I truly commit to things, I really have stopped impulsively saying yes and just pausing to take a real look at what do I actually have going on? Do I have time for this? Things like that. And also having a supportive partner that's like, hey, we have like John knows that he can't be like, hey, this afternoon, we need to be here. He'll be like, hey, at 2:50, we need to be leaving out of the door at 2:50. And I'm like, okay, got it. If I have I can figure that out and backtrack, what I need to do. But
So I have a theory on this. I think that our time blindness is just a different manifestation of our object permanence, and time is something that you cannot see.
Oh, wow. I actually love that.
Yeah. So like, if you think about it, like,
write that
object
down.
permanence, out of sight, out of mind, right? Well, time is something that can't be seen unless you're consistently looking at a clock. And who's doing that, right? That's not, we're not in grade school anymore with the two hands on the wall, spinning around, counting down the days, the amount of time you're stuck in jail. We don't have that now. We have cell phones. We barely even have clocks in front of us that we don't have to touch a button to digitally see the time most of the time, unless y'all are, I can't stand watches, so I don't. But yeah, object permanence and time blindness, I think, are the same thing.
That is really a really, really good take on that. Really, really good. I like that a lot, actually. So
it helps me plan for things because I have a lot of stuff packed onto my schedule to the point where neurotypical people are like, how do you manage and do all of the things? And I think the thing that I do is I approach managing my time the same way I do managing my object permanence, because object permanence for me is like actually a really big deal, and it can be detrimental because I also get object permanence when it comes to emotions and people.
Mm-hmm.
If it is not in front of me and I'm not focused on it, it may not exist at all. And, maybe that comes down to the wired mechanics of the matrix that we're in and, all of that. But if it's not directly in front of me. So, yeah, I approach even the ADHD hack I'm going to share today comes from the out of sight, out of mind, because that is where I live.
That is, I really like that. I wrote it down. Like, we have time blindness and we cannot see time. I love that. That's a great hot take.
Man, thanks.
So let's
So on that,
see.
segue.
We've got an ADHD hack that I'm really excited for you to share. I think it's so great.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's ADHD, but this one does really come down to my object permanence. So I'm a plant lady for those of you out there that don't know or follow me at all. And I'm a plant lady. Like, I grow a bunch of fruits and veggies in my backyard, and I've got 150 plants behind this wall of digital computer screen right here that you can't see. Well, it's always in my house, it's always kind of been survival of the fittest. Like, if I bring you home or you're gifted to me, like as a plant, if you don't survive the Lyndsay remembered to water me watering schedule, then you don't live in this house. I guess between traveling and the kids' schedule and all of this stuff, like, there will be times I will look up from my desk and be like, oh my God, 80% of my plants are wilted. I should probably get up and get some water. And part of that is that you can't see what's actually happening inside of the potters or the pots, right? So this is the hack that I came up with. I recently, in the last 3 weeks, I've switched over almost all of my planters to this method. And I've been going to the thrift shops and I've been getting glass containers, because when you put in a drainage system like this in your dirt, you can actually see when there's enough water in there. And this is full. You guys see the water line right there? So as long as I've got water on these rocks, my plant is good. So now I can see if this is dry down here, I got to go get the water. So that is helpful. Also using it in propagations. So everything that I can possibly water prop now, I am. Because now I can see actually when the roots have started and they need to be transplanted instead of just trying to pick and guess when you do it in dirt.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I also think too, just for, stimulation purposes, I think it's really cool to like see what's actually going on in there,
Well, I have one. See if I can hop up and get it in a minute. It's a really big one though, but it's been in a glass container like this for probably about 3 months. It was the first one I ever did. And it's got roots you can see where the roots are all ingrown and where they're all down like in the pot. It's pretty cool. So if you like the science side of plants too, extra added benefit. Extra bennies. So yeah, that's my ADHD hack. If you have a hard time keeping your plants alive, put them in glass containers.
And also another like kind of sidebar from that hack is that she mentioned she's getting these clear containers from a thrift store, which if you guys have shopped for plant pots recently, it's really crazy how expensive they are. And we can get into this in another episode, but people with ADHD, because of their lack of impulsivity, well, I was going to say lack of impulse control. Yeah, lack of impulse control. We have lots of financial issues. We tend to. And so actually going to a thrift store would save you money and, which is awesome. So.
Yeah, I would have paid probably $45 for a glass container like that at Target, and I paid $1.75 at Savers. Yep. Mondays are half off days, just so everybody knows.
Oh,
if you go to Savers on a Monday, everything's half off. There you go. Now you know. So yeah, that's my little tip. And I haven't had anything die since I made this transition. So it's working. Before you know it, 5 years from now, somebody's going to walk into my backyard and there's going to be massive, big glass It's not a greenhouse. It's just a glass raised garden bed. Y'all.
It's a glass
I like to
house.
see that. All right. Yeah. So there you go, y'all. That's another little helpful tip. It looks cool. It does give a very classy, like, I don't know if I really want to swing my camera. I'm going to do it anyways, y'all. Don't judge me because I'm in the middle of like redecorating my office. But there are a lot of plants over here, and it really does give a much better ambiance to the room as well.
I think it,
Classic.
I think it's,
Classic.
yeah, it's
Queen.
glassy.
Classic. All right.
Like my new, this is my new microphone setup. It's perfect.
I love it. I love it. It's the cutest cup. All right, y'all. So, hot take an ADHD hack out of the way. This one, our topic of conversation today, I am curious to see how it manifests in the conversations in our comments, etc. Because this is actually parts of this can be controversial points of thought, right, or discussion. So the question that we are going to attempt to answer from our points of view today is, can neurodivergence be developed? Meaning, is it necessarily something that you are born with? So there's three general rules of, or schools of thought to that, or three general like stems that people believe that neurodivergence can come from. The first one's being genes, obviously, your genetic markers, predisposition through, family legacy. The second one is environmental. And so that would be more like nature versus nurture. So we are talking about environmental, like the household you grew up in, this is where, and I'll get a little farther into this as we talk, but this is where like complex CPTSD comes into.
Yeah.
Or not complex, it's just CPTSD or complex PTSD. But that can often also be misdiagnosed as autism. So there's multiple markers there. And then the third one, the one that's like, in my opinion, still very up in the air, is the chemical. So that would be like, vaccine injuries, heavy metal, or needing heavy metal detox. I guess it's what called heavy metal poisoning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would be technical poisoning. Yeah. So those are the three like main trellises, right, that people will like navigate through when they're thinking through, autism, ADHD, OCD. There's, the whole spectrum is in here.
And
so
I just want to say too that because this is such a controversial thing. So Lyndsay just mentioned vaccines. I just want to preface with like, we're not saying that vaccines cause autism. That is not at all what we're saying. I know that there's a lot of chit chat around that these days, but like, I just want to say, like, if you just got annoyed and like you want to click out of this episode, that is not what we're saying. And we're going to do a deep dive.
Just hold on a second. No. So this is going to be our interpretation of the experiences that we have had, the things that we have read, and the things that are going through the news right now. So yes, please, everybody out there, we are not aligning with any of these one way or another. I do believe that there's, like, I will say that I absolutely believe that all of this can be passed down through genes, but that is like evolutionary science to me. The rest of it, worth discussing, I believe, right? And I think, at least as far as the vaccine injuries, I believe we're going to see some data either supporting or not in that in the next few months, years, etc., because I do believe they're looking more heavily at that now. So yes, thank you, Chey. Preface that, get it out of the way. We are not aligning with any of these directly, so thank you. Yeah. So genes, there was a funny thing the other day, because there's a lot of people that are saying, autism didn't exist 100 years ago, and, it's all vaccines. So there's like that rule of thought, or school of thought rather. And for me, I'm like, this guy made this post about his mom, how she was saying that about his autism. And he did a tour around her house and was like, okay, Nancy, here's your tiny collection of spoons. And here's your plates of Princess Diana. And it's just, he's going piece to piece to piece of his mother's home, like, because autism didn't exist in the 60s, right? And I see it, like my mother to this day will come online and attack me publicly saying that I couldn't possibly have the diagnoses that I have. But yet you look at the entirety of her being, and I'm like, ma'am, I think you probably need to go talk to somebody.
Yeah,
Your
not gonna
obsession
happen.
with penguins and precious moments is a little weird for a grown-ass woman.
Right. And my mom got diagnosed with ADHD. So like my dad, it was always very obvious. Like my dad had ADHD or has, and he always lived by the narrative that he would just grow out of it, just lack of information back then. And he was never formally diagnosed, but it's very obvious. And I was diagnosed when I was 7. And then my mom was diagnosed when she was 65. So like a couple years ago. And it's so interesting because we always were focused on our family dynamic was Chey has ADHD and like I was the focus. And then all these years later, when she was diagnosed way late in life, she's like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. The depression, the mood swings, the impulsive shopping, always struggling financially, always looking to, drugs and alcohol, which is a huge indicator of neurodivergence and especially ADHD, because you're looking for that dopamine, et cetera, et cetera. And her whole world opened up when she realized, oh my gosh, I have ADHD, and she was formally diagnosed and all that good stuff. But it's so interesting, I think, too, when you have a young child in the home who is diagnosed with neurodivergence, and the focus is on them, and the parents don't stop to think, okay, this genetically came from somewhere. Me and husband need to take a look at this. I think it's important for sure. So
Yeah,
I think genetics in this whole conversation is like, I am firm on
that's
that.
the anchor.
That is for sure. It is genetic. If you have ADHD, if you have autism, etc., someone in your immediate family also does, period.
Yeah. And you can't tell me back to caveman days when they would have the one person in the tribe that could like very clearly replicate 50 different bird sounds, that they didn't have some autistics back then. I'm sorry. Like, I think that's the thing too, is that I think probably needs to be rewired a little bit. I'm rewriting it for myself in the verbiage that I'm using, but it being a disability or a negative difference, like I honestly think that we have kind of always, like, if we revert back to base human society without all the influx and propaganda and tech and all of the bullshit, if we revert back to base human society and you look at the skills sets that are needed, and you look at the people, positions, places that are needed in like a tribal community, what we were meant to be originally, there almost have to be autistics or
Interesting.
ADHD. Or like, if you think about the like skill sets that people would naturally need to have, neurotypicals do not have some of those for like the hunter gatherers, etc. The like the high level problem solvers, the architects, the engineers, like those things back before there was school to teach you how to do those things. How did these people learn?
Yeah.
So I think back to like, yeah.
I have two things here. So this is not political, but before he was ever in politics, like let's just take a look at Elon Musk. I mean, he has revolutionized technology in the world. Electric vehicles. That was not a thing. Back in the day when I would see a Tesla, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, this is the future. SpaceX, the Wi-Fi thing. What's it called?
Starlink.
Huh?
Starlink.
Yeah. These things are revolutionary. And he has autism, and he just happens to have like a genius IQ. And I mean, he changed the world, no matter where you stand politically. I am just talking about him as a human and his autism diagnosis. He changed the world. It's fascinating, truly.
So let's talk about a few other of the autistic, shall we? Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein. Like, let's just look at their workspaces. That's how you can tell. Look at their workspaces.
Yeah. I may be wrong. Wasn't Steve Jobs? Maybe not. I can't.
I think so.
I think so. I think there was talk about it.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, if you can wear the same outfit every day for 30 years, you might be autistic.
that's so valid.
Not about being rich and saving the time and the energy to choose. That's not what it is. Because I've heard people say that. They're like, oh, yeah, when they're rich and they have other things to worry about. No, they're reverting back to who they are and living to their most comfortable self, which very autistic of you to wear the same thing all the time.
So, that's actually really funny because when I put this on today, I don't have autism, but I do have ADHD, and I like what's comfy on my body because it comes with a bunch of sensory stuff. But I put this sweatshirt on and I was like, how many episodes am I going to wear the same sweatshirt? But I always just grab this one. It's so comfy. But the second thing that I wanted to ask or bring up, because I think about this a lot and I just can't find the answer. And to be quite honest, I think I don't know how to ask it to get the right answer through research. So why do so many people have ADHD or autism? And the answer I always find is it's just being diagnosed more. And I'm like, okay, no, I get that. But how is it so prevalent? Like, because it's a for lack of a better word, malfunction in the brain. So when did that start happening? Why did it start happening? Like, what is up with that you essentially have a 50-50 shot of being neurotypical or neurodivergent? I don't get that. Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah. So here's the question. Is it that it's actually happening more and there are more people, or is it that education and testing is more available? Because if you think about like a human society, it would make sense to me that you would have almost a 50-50 split between one type of brain pattern and another type of brain pattern. If you were going to have two very distinct biological markers in a brain, it would make sense to me that you would have a pretty equal variance between the two.
But like, what happened along the human timeline that our brains became neurodivergent? Because
how do we know that they've become that over? How do we know that they haven't always been that way? Is my question.
Yeah. It's just like but like what in genetics or what in like biology or like so psychology?
I think we just breed more and always have. I think neurodivergents are bound to have more children on average per person. And I think part of that is because once we start a process, like I think about the friends of mine that I know are neurodivergent that have children already, and not one of them is happy with just one or two kids. Like,
yeah, I just don't.
Like, I think we might just be overbreeding it a little bit.
Well, let's just say, like,
that's one thing I'll tell you. Her addiction was alcohol, but her dopamine was meth. Still is. So I feel like, because she's been married, like, God, I don't even know how many times, like at least 5 times, I feel like, at least. But I'm sure it's more than that. I haven't had contact in like 8-9 years, and I know there's been at least 1 or 2 since then. But that thing to me, like, I feel like neurodivergents have more children, which is spreading the genealogical tree a lot faster.
That is a good point. But what I'm saying is, it
is our environment creating different.
Yeah, like, okay, when you are born, when I become pregnant, you know, and I'm just, you know, my body is healthy, normal, I'm a normal age to have kids, whatever. I don't have a 50-50 shot of having a kid with cancer. or a kid with Down syndrome or this or that or the other. But I'm like, why is ADHD and autism? How is it so like, it feels like almost freaking everybody has ADHD. And I'm like, when did this and how did this see? It's a complicated question to ask and I can't figure it out, but I digress.
So, I hear the question that you're asking. And so if I were to ask it in a different way, I would say, what about our environmental influxes and the changes that we've seen as a human society over the last 50 years could be predominant factors into an increase in ADHD, autism, neurodivergence, et cetera? That's how I would ask that question, because it'll pull different data. You'll be able to pull different data that way.
Which brings us into, can environmental stress and trauma cause neurodivergence? And I know that you have some personal experience with this.
So I'm not going to speak in certains. I'm only going to speak in the way that it has felt to me. There is something called CPTSD. It's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and it generally comes from years of systematic abuse. So emotional, psychological, physical, sexual. Majority of people that have this have experienced symptoms near to Stockholm syndrome with their abusers. Like, it is very complex PTSD, because it's generally happening in systems where there's love, etc. Like, CPTSD is not something that happens from, like, maybe it can, but it's not common with like military service. That's just PTSD.
Sure.
Complex PTSD is where there are very deep emotional, usually family ties, like long-term domestic violence. Like, that is where because it's systemic and you're usually dependent on your abuser for survival.
Sure.
So
and
for me,
I don't know the percentage, but it is a vast majority of people who experience sexual abuse or trauma. It was done by someone that they know very closely, a neighbor, an uncle, a father, a grandfather, a horse trainer, whatever the hell. It is someone that you and your family literally know. So, okay.
That's the same for women and being murdered too, though. I mean, it's just
classic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is generally people that you know. It can also be households where the mother is an addict and has a lot of people coming in and out of the environment. It can be, there's a lot of different options that can sit in, right?
So
yeah,
in
I
those
hate to put that out there and have everybody think it's always like a dad, an uncle, a brother. Sometimes the people that
Sure.
put you in the most danger can be your own mothers. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that out there.
And the CPTSD can
so
essentially,
it develops very similar symptoms to autism or ADHD, meaning it can develop issues with anxiety, panic attacks, depression, but also night terrors. Like, I still suffer from those even with years of therapy. But it also response rate, it affects your fight or flight system. It affects it affects how you interpret situations, to the point where it gives you the same data absorption as being autistic, because you've had to learn through trauma and survivalism to be able to read and instantaneously react to every bit of energy, movement, etc. in the room, because usually the environments that create this type of trauma are environments that you cannot escape. You live in them full time, generally. So
essentially you're just extremely dysregulated.
Correct. And for a lot of us, we spend so many years of our life in a dysregulated nervous system that it can be incredibly hard to get it back to regulated and feel comfortable with it being. What we're seeing a lot of now is an inverse of misdiagnosis, and in both directions. So I was diagnosed with CPTSD, and I probably do have a good amount of that just based on, my formative years. But I do also have autism and ADHD, and they couldn't see that for the longest time because we weren't working past just the trauma. So now that I've been in EMDR for a few years and we've worked past the trauma and we can see the actual neural networking, now that my nervous system has come back into a regulated state, we're able to see the actual okay, these are actual autism things and these are actual ADHD things, because we're now finally able to separate them from the trauma.
Got it.
So
possible to have both.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of little girls that are boys, but I speak from a girl's point of view because they're usually the ones that don't get diagnosed until way later.
Yeah.
So they're normally the ones that see the CPTSD to redirect of diagnoses, basically. So a lot of little girls that are coming up in that environment, they mask so heavily out of fear that it's not even just the normal levels of social pressure or anxiety masking, like a lot of little girls with autism will do. They'll learn your basic masking. I had to learn masking to a level that my mother to this day will get on and attack me publicly, calling me a manipulative child, because I had to learn how to control my reactions, emotions, interpretation of environments, conduct my own, garters of safety. It's just the wildest thing to me to think that you can say that about an 8-year-old child, a 9-year-old child, and not be able to look at wait a minute, as a mom,
what role did I play in this?
What role did I play in this? And the fact that she will get online and say that I am not nor have ever been autistic, when I used to beat bruises onto my head that you could see with my hairbrush because I would get so overstimulated trying to get rats out of my hair.
Yeah.
There were so many things that I look back on it and I'm like, God, I couldn't even imagine treating my daughter that way, seeing my daughter do the same things that I used to do now. And I just
yeah.
If you're still out there stalking me, Mom, please go fucking talk to somebody and see about getting diagnosed, because I'm sorry, I know you also had trauma, but you are not wired correctly, because
Right.
I am not wired correctly. So please stop damaging people and go get some help. That's all I'm going to say on it.
Anytime I tried to have a conversation with my mom about my upbringing and one of the most, the other day I was at my sister's house and my niece was sobbing, throwing a fit. She's 3 months old. And I held her up in front of the mirror and I go, "This is what you look like when you throw in a fit." And Cammie was like, "Please don't do that." And I was like, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that," because our parents used to videotape me when I was having breakdowns, and then they would force me to watch it. When I was doing my homework, I would be screaming, crying because I didn't fucking understand the curriculum. It did not compute. And
different language. Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned differently, and there were no systems for that in 2002, 2001, 1999. And so it was really traumatic. And even though they didn't record my sister or show my sister, it was still a traumatic experience for her. So anyway, anytime I would try to talk to my mother about, hey, you were really hard to be raised by. And she always, it's never, I understand, I was dysregulated, I was undiagnosed, da, da, da. It's, well, you were difficult. What did you want me to do? What did you want me to do? You were so hard to raise. You were such a difficult child. And I would just be like, okay, this conversation's never That's what my sister always says. We were the kids in the situation, having only been on earth for what, 5, 6, 7 years. You are
Yeah.
brand new to earth, you know? So frustrating. So,
Yeah.
um,
My conversations, the couple that I've tried to have over the years, and one of the reasons I just cut contact entirely is because with her addiction issues, she doesn't remember the majority of
interesting. Yeah, that's a
it.
good
And it
point.
was just drinking, but like she doesn't remember how many times like we stepped over her and her boyfriend at the time in the trailer to get ready for school, or like the 2 days that I laid in bed nearly fucking dying from appendicitis when I was 9 years old, and she wouldn't take me to the hospital until I was projectile vomiting because she was hungover. Like, and then I had emergency surgery. Like, it was leaking. I was literally being poisoned to death by my own body. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but I was difficult. And
right.
someday I'll know how difficult I was when I have my own children, because they're going to turn out just like me. I was never the fucking problem.
Exactly.
Never the
These
problem.
two actually lead into each other. So it is proven that genetics cause neurodivergence, and it is also proven that your environment and trauma can cause neurodivergent
Like,
symptoms and dysregulation. So if it is genetic and your parents are undiagnosed, it is more likely that you are going to be in a traumatic environment. So it all fucking flows together. All of it
which is
flows together.
a lot more likely for you to have a late in life diagnosis, because A, your parents are not taking care of you the way that they should. So you're not getting medical. They haven't gotten their own medical or psychological. So they don't even know what they're looking at. It's
Yep.
just a whole, I mean, that's another reason I think that the having more resources for education and social proofing, I think that's another reason we are seeing more of it. Not that it didn't exist before, but we're
Sure.
finally getting out from underneath our parents and getting help for things that were very shush shush.
Yep.
From the 70s back, you didn't talk about mental health. So, you just collected your tiny spoons and
Collectibles and yeah. So
yeah,
and then our last
yeah,
one was
chemical. And this
chemical.
is really a hot button conversation. It's the trending topic. It's, I cruise a lot of social media because that's what I do for work, but I cruise a lot of neurodivergent social media, honestly, because that's where I start to learn things about us. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff that I bring here to y'all is because I saw a tidbit somewhere online and then I was like, ooh, interesting. And then I go research it more, get the actual data. Like, don't y'all, I'm not saying don't go align with all the stuff you see on TikTok, please.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
get ideas and then go do real research, please.
So
Uh,
this one is basically like chemical. So like an injury or poisoning or things like that. And I'm going to read this because I don't know enough about it, but I just learned about it a couple weeks ago because I came across a young lady on Instagram who has something called PANDAS or also PANS. And so PANDAS stands for pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptop streptococcal infections. So basically, it's when a strep infection, like strep throat, triggers the immune system and accidentally attacks part of the brain, specifically the areas that affect mood, behavior, and movement. There's also PANS, which is not caused by strep, but can be triggered from other infections, inflammation, or even environmental factors. So, what does it look like? Suddenly, you have a neurotypical child who or person who now has OCD behaviors, tics, severe changes in mood, trouble with attention, sleep problems, and personality changes. So this is from your immune system accidentally attacking your brain when you have an infection of some sort, which literally can cause your brain chemistry to change and reflect uh, pretty extreme neurodivergence, like mood disorders and OCD and things like that. So this is a real thing where you were not born neurodivergent, and it is not genetically caused, but it is caused from chemicals and infections and things like that, which I was like, holy crap, I had never heard of this in my life.
Yeah. And I think that has a pretty quick onset too, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Like your child, this poor girl that I saw, bless her little heart. She's so young and so sweet. And online, she's just, I mean, I think she's maybe in 8th or 9th grade, and she is just like trying to navigate her new brain. And she just went from an everyday regular kid to it was something like with an IV or something, and it attacked her brain, and now she has extreme OCD. She's like, she said herself, she's super awkward and doesn't know how to socialize anymore, has extreme mood changes. She doesn't have friends anymore. It's just devastating. So.
Baby. Yeah, that I didn't know much about it until you brought it up on our prep call the other day, and I went I watched the video. I went and looked at her profile you sent me and looked at a few other things, and so I think not only pandas, but I think there's some cases too. Or I was picking up on little pieces of this, but I don't want to speak on it too fully until I do some more research. But I think there's also some traumatic brain injuries that can do the same thing.
Oh yeah,
Also,
that makes sense.
so that's another interesting one that I'll take some time to look at a little more later. But the biggest ones for me, the two larger arguments or points of, I don't know how to put it, I guess arguments, speaking topics, points of topic, whatever, are heavy metal poisoning
Mm.
and immuno injury or vaccine injury, right? So there's, I believe it was RFK right now. There's been a lot going on in the news about them looking at specific data. There's been some information released. I need to go and look at it more heavily to see how I feel, because I have a different kind of stance on this one. While I do believe that the vaccines can cause autism-like symptoms, I don't know if it's actually autism. You know, I kind of almost wish we had a different name for it, like a different, or even calling it like, a VCA or something, like vaccine created autism, something along those lines where there's a differentiation. Because what I'm seeing when I look at like traditionally diagnosed autistics and the vaccine injury suggested autistics, like people that think that this is how it happened, they show the same nonverbal, physical aggression, the tics, but there's also like a few other things that aren't super common, at least not in my experience with autistic people and what I've read about it. So it makes me think that there's like something extra, like it's autism plus, autism 2.0 or something, you know what I mean? Like it's a different variation of what happens in our brains to what happens in their brains. And I think that
Yeah,
comes
because
down to like
what were you telling me? There was something in the brain that if you have that, you have autism. What was that?
so it comes down to your synaptic pruning.
Yeah.
So yeah, so your brain is full of like synapses, and synapses are these little like almost fiber looking things that like line your neural network, and those are the things that bring in information. So the more synapses you have, the more details you can pick up from your five senses in general. I think too that there's even a sixth sense that is coming in some of the like higher energy waved autistics. That's what I'm going to call it. That I call them high motor autistics. So they're not nonverbal. They're not like not the level 1 through 2, 3. None of that. There is a specific class of autistics that are coming into light right now that are like me, fully functional, fully social, fully verbal, but they have a different level of intelligence. Like I consider myself pretty smart. I can hold my own in most conversations, right? These people are like, I hate to use the word Rain Man status because they're not socially inept, but they are at a different level of intelligence that I've never seen. But
Like
with these
highly
people,
intelligent.
highly intelligent. But these people actually are showing a development of a sixth sense, and it's being able to gauge energy. So they've been testing a few of these people where they will put them behind a wall or a partition, and they'll like bring in different kinds of plants or animals that they cannot see, hear, smell, nothing. And these people are able to actually feel what it is on the other side of the wall. And that's a whole different level of information ingestion, in my opinion. I think that's all it is they're just receiving a whole different level of information than we are.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
So
but
what
so
happens?
I'm curious if you can see, so people with autism have more synapses than a neurotypical person or someone who just doesn't have autism. So if it is something that is
40%
caused
more.
by, let's say,
It's 40% more.
40% more, massive number.
Yeah.
So let's say someone has PANDAS or PANS or something goes on with a vaccine or whatever. Are we able to look at their brain and see if they have a neurotypical number of synapses and see like, okay, this person was not born with this, it was developed later? Is that a thing?
So I believe so. Here is the question though. Can synapses be regrown? Because the way that it's given scientifically right now is that you are born with a shit ton of them, and then over the first like small part of your like development, your brain, a neurotypical person's brain sheds or prunes. It's called prunes about 40% of their synapses, where an autistic person retains those. They still lose some, but they retain 40% more than the average person or the neurotypical brain. And this is, I do believe ADHD also has some of this, but the highest, like the 40%, the massive marker is in autistics.
Okay.
And it's just the way that our brains ingest information. That's all it is. And so I'm wondering if maybe this new like class of autistics, for one, that can feel energy and such, if maybe they're just retaining more than the 40%, like they're just not losing any synapses from birth on, which would be insane because that means technically they're holding pre-life knowledge, which is interesting. So I'm curious how that could be studied. Yeah, they should be able to, because you
So
can
this
see
is
it in
just
your electrical wiring.
this is from ChatGPT right now, and it says, yes, synapses can be regrown. The brain has an amazing ability to adapt and rewire itself. Let's see. Here's a simple breakdown. Synapses are a little, we just talked about that. So when you learn something new, practice a skill, or recover from an injury, your brain can create new synapses or strengthen existing ones. In some cases, especially after an injury, illness, or trauma, synapses can be damaged or lost, but the brain can often rebuild or reroute these connections over time. Things like therapy, exercise, blah, blah, blah. However, it is not always a full recovery. Okay, so interesting.
So the question for me is, can a vaccine cause that? Because that's the part where I get like, because when they're saying like, yes, they can rebuild after trauma, that means the trauma has lessened them and they rebuild back to where they were. The question is can you lose 40% of your synapses through your normal organic pruning for a neurotypical and then regain 40% of them through a vaccine, an illness, heavy metals? Because that's the question that I get stuck on in my brain. Like, if biologically it can happen, yeah, it makes sense because people recover from traumatic brain injuries all the time, right? But can these chemicals or metals cause that? And I think that's what they need to look at is like
Yeah.
what chemically in these would be able to cause cellular regeneration.
Yeah. It's something that we need to look at because like vaccines are important. Like it literally keeps us alive. But if we need to look at a safer way of receiving and giving them, then what have you. But yeah, it's interesting. I wrote that down because I want to look at that today because I think that's really really interesting. And yeah, yeah, I want to look into that. Also, random, but you mentioned EMDR therapy earlier, and I wrote it down because like I really need to get back into therapy. It's something that's been like heavily on my mind recently. And I wrote down ADHD and OCD, because I have both. You're usually have, if you have ADHD or autism, you usually have something else. And then
Mm.
I was going to write like other things that I wanted to talk to the therapist about. And then I wrote, never mind, everything stems from the ADHD and OCD. Like I wanted to talk about rejection sensitivity and uh, impulsivity and low self-esteem stuff. And I was like, never mind. If I just talk to her about my neurodivergence, we'll get into all of that naturally. So anyway, I'm
Do you
really
know what I
excited.
think do you know what I think remix? What I think EMDR would be very beneficial for you for?
Trauma. I don't know. Oh
That's
yeah.
exactly what it's used for. Yeah, the extra 20,000 negative comments,
Hmm.
the having to rewatch yourself in emotional moments that you have no control over,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, it'll
And
help. And I suggest it before you have children because
yes.
I carry a lot of guilt right now. I've known since before I had children that I was traumatized, obviously, and I've been in therapy for years, all different kinds. But if I would have had discovered EMDR before I had children, I definitely would have waited to have children until I was done because I'm going to, it took me a long time to get diagnosed and to properly start addressing my issues. So I know that I wasn't as healthy of a mom initially as I know there's going to be some trauma from like Landon's earliest years, just him and I trying to fucking make it and stuff, that I will as an adult go back and squash through with him because I'm healing now.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's like, I guess, a big difference between my mother and me and my children is that I see it and I'm taking conscious actions to make sure that they don't end up traumatized like I did.
Right. And I I think that's why it's been heavily on my mind lately is because I'm like, wow, it's almost August. I'm getting married in April and I really want to have some
Be
healing
pregnant
done
by June.
before we get pregnant next year. And I'm like, I have shit to take care of before I take care of a tiny little baby, a little human that's supposed to be, in a healthy environment. But I also wrote down what you said earlier. Her addiction was alcohol, her dopamine was men. And I wrote that down because I lived that life almost all of my 20s. And it made me really proud that I don't feel that way anymore. I was like, okay. Last night before bed, I was doing my little routine or whatever. And I was like, gosh, I haven't had like crappy thoughts about myself or like felt horrible about myself in a while. Like I go through little stints, I think like hormonally, like in my luteal phase and stuff, but I used to just live there, hate myself, drink about it, date about it, sleep around about it, whatever. I'm like, wow, I have really improved here. And that makes me really happy. So anyway,
I
so
I I think I was just traumatized enough. I ended up just having a couple of really long relationships, so I dated a little bit. Like, I don't know, I've just been a mom from so young that, married for 10 years and, you know, um, yeah, I didn't really have that, but I'm glad I didn't because I could see how I could have taken the same pathways as her if I would have been, you know, more free to just go live in my emotion and not worried about feeding little people's mouths,
sure.
you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah. Oh, y'all, it's not easy. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna just put that out there for those of you that are moms, are looking at being moms, are traumatized by your moms, and are dealing with neurodivergence, man. It's not easy. And we feel all of you out there.
yep.
The heavy
So
metal poisoning one, I don't really know a whole lot about. I know that it's a common point of conversation. And I feel like it's tied to the vaccines, but I don't want to put out misinformation on anything.
yeah.
I have that left on my notes. And I wanted to make sure I put it out there so we don't get anybody that's like, wait a minute, what about these? And if there's stuff we're not thinking about, y'all, please throw it in the comments. We love
Yeah.
seeing comments. We don't get them very often, so please. Okay. On that, I guess that concludes our, unless you have anything to add, Chey. Sorry, I just got
I'm
so
good.
distracted. Okay. I think it is probably time to do an episode on parenting coming up here shortly. I have a couple people to pull on, well, the other girls as well, because all of us either are moms or about to be moms. So yay. Thank you all for tuning in. If there's anything we're missing or not covering, y'all, please let us know. We're just, trying to get information out there and we're all learning together. So
Yep.
love you for it. Like, share, subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notified every time we post something. We're going to be trying to do 2 episodes a week moving forward. So we will see you guys on the channel.
Bye.